The water came first, not the beast, not the screams, not the wood splintering along the keel. The water, dark, cold, pressing through iron links of armor before I understood I had fallen. 49 men on that hull, 49 shields, 49 swords, 49 men who marched for the Emperor. The liburna of the Third Cohort, dispatched to the shallows of Ostia by imperial order, never returned to dock. The scribes recorded a victory. One man came back. If the archive recorded a victory, what was watching me from beneath the hull? The year was the 10th of Claudius's reign. Rome had drained the Fucine Lake to impress the Senate, and in doing so had opened a canal into the coastal shallows near Ostia. The dredging had disturbed something. The harbour pilots noticed it first. Fishing boats found with planks staved inward, not outward. The damage came from below. Word reached the Praetorian prefect within a week. Word reached the emperor within 3 days of that. Claudius did not call a philosopher. He did not call a haruspex to read the entrails of a bull. He called the third cohort of the fleet. My name is Lucius Aemilius Crito. I had served 9 years under the Eagle before the morning they handed us our orders at the military dock. I had fought in 3 river campaigns in Germania and lost 2 fingers on my left hand to a Chatan war axe. I was not a man who feared water. What I am about to describe has nothing to do with fear of the unknown. I knew exactly what was under that hull. That was the problem. The liburna assigned to our unit was a light military vessel, low in the water, built for speed and close combat. She carried roughly 50 men, 30 oarsmen below the main deck, and 20 of us from the guard above, armed with pila and short swords. The centurion, Marcus Petronius Rufus, had run naval interdictions before, mostly against Cilician pirates in the eastern reaches. He explained the operation with the calm of a man describing a road patrol. The creature, he said, had been observed from the breakwater over 3 successive dawns. It surfaced to breathe. Its back was reported as dark and ridged, roughly the width of 2 ox carts placed side by side. The harbour master had estimated its length at no less than 15 paces. The orders were straightforward: encircle the canal mouth, drive it into the shallows, and kill it before it could reach open water. No one on that dock had ever seen it. That distinction belonged to the harbour pilots alone, and they had refused, collectively, to return to the water. The harbour master had offered them silver. They had refused. I learned this afterward from a dock slave who had been present at the negotiation. The pilots, men who had navigated the Ostian shallows for decades, had chosen poverty over returning to that water. Petronius Rufus did not tell us this. I wonder sometimes if he knew. We pushed off at the 2nd hour of the morning. The Tiber mouth was flat and grey, mist sitting low between the breakwater arms. I remember the creak of the thole pins, the shallow chop against the hull. Below us, perhaps 3 or 4 feet of water over a sandy bottom. The canal mouth was 200 paces to the east, a dark gap in the stone embankment where the dredging had punched through. The orders were to position the liburna across the mouth and wait. We waited for less than 1 hour. The first sign was the birds. A cluster of terns working the shallows to the south rose together without sound and flew inland. Not scattered, as birds scatter from a thrown stone, together in a single mass, as if something beneath them had changed the temperature of the water. The oarmaster noticed it. He said nothing, but I saw him look down at the surface beside the hull. The second sign was the water itself. In the shallows to our east, the sandy bottom became briefly visible, not because the water cleared, but because something large was moving beneath it, displacing silt upward. A column of disturbed sediment rising slowly like smoke in still air, 40 paces wide. It was moving toward us. Petronius Rufus ordered the front rank to ready their pila. The oarmaster called for oars in. The hull drifted. And then the water directly to our starboard side simply rose. Not broke, not parted. Rose, as if the sea floor had decided to become sky. The back of the creature surfaced no more than 10 paces from the hull. It was not like the harbour master's descriptions. It was not sleek. The skin was rough and folded, like wet leather left to dry and then re-wetted, ridged in patterns that caught the morning light strangely. The colour was the colour of deep harbour mud, that specific brown-black that means depth and cold. And the size. 15 paces had seemed an estimate a man could prepare for. Standing on that deck, watching our liburna become suddenly small beside that back, I understood that 15 paces had been a conservative guess. Petronius Rufus shouted the order. The front rank threw. 12 Pila left the deck in the same breath. Most found the target. The creature did not flinch. It did not dive. It went still. One long moment of absolute stillness in which the entire estuary seemed to hold its breath. Then it turned. Not away from us. Toward us. What happened next took less time than it takes to speak it. Something, I believe it was the tail, swept sideways through the shallows in a single lateral motion. The force it produced moved through the water rather than on top of it. It hit the starboard side of the liburna below the waterline. The oars on that side simply ceased to exist. I heard them go, not the crack of wood, but a concussive thud I felt in my sternum before I heard it with my ears. The hull tilted. I reached for the rail. The rail was no longer where the rail had been. I went into the water, still holding my shield. The lorica segmentata weighs, when fully fitted, between 15 and 20 Roman pounds. In open water, in armour, a man does not struggle. There is no drama in it. You simply descend. The shield went first. I cannot say whether I let it go or the water took it. Then I was falling through cold grey water, watching the light above me recede. The sound of the surface world compressed itself into a low, directionless pressure in my ears. The bottom of the Ostian shallows was perhaps 4 body lengths below the surface. I did not reach it. Something moving in the water near me arrested my descent before I touched the sand. I hung there in the cold grey-green dark, armour and all, suspended, with the light above me like a pale membrane. I looked up. The silhouette was above me. I have tried in the years since to find adequate language for what I saw in those seconds. I am a soldier, not a poet. I deal in measurements and the geometry of combat. So I will describe it as I would describe a military obstacle, in terms of size, shape, and the problem it presents. The creature occupied most of the visible water above me. The center was blocked. The body, seen from below, was not cylindrical the way a fish is cylindrical. It was flattened, widest, at a point roughly 2/3 toward the tail. That width was not 15 paces. The harbour master had looked from above, from safety. From below, I could see the full lateral span. I counted my own body lengths against it, the way a surveyor counts strides to measure a field. I arrived at a number I did not include in my account to the Praetorian scribe. I included a smaller number. The scribe did not question it. The skin from below caught the light differently. From above it had appeared uniformly dark. From below, in refracted columns of morning light, it had a faint iridescence at the edges. Not bright, but a subtle shift in colour, where the body curved into darker water. The colour there was closer to deep bruising, and it moved without turbulence. A whale moves with effort, with displaced water, with the visible mechanics of mass negotiating resistance. This creature moved the way a shadow moves across a wall when a cloud crosses the sun. There was no pressure wave. There was no wake. The Pila were still in its back. I could see them from below. 12 iron-tipped shafts, some angled, some nearly vertical, some already working loose. They had not slowed it. The blood came down in thin, dark threads, unwinding slowly in the water between me and the creature's body. It was then that the creature's underside passed close enough that I could have reached up and touched it, had my arms not been pinned by the weight of iron I was still wearing. It did not touch me. In the account I gave the Praetorian scribe, this point was rendered as follows. The creature passed without incident, and the witness reached the surface by means of a timber fragment. What the scribe omitted is the detail I gave him before that. He paused over it. He read it back to me with a slightly different wording. I corrected him. He re-rendered it again until I understood that the detail was not going to appear in the archive as I had given it. The creature slowed when it was directly above me. I am not assigning intention to this. I am recording a physical fact. The movement became, for a period I estimate at between 10 and 30 heartbeats, a complete cessation of forward progress. Then, from beneath the main body, in a region of folded skin and shadow near what I believe to be the ventral surface, something extended. It was not a fin. It was articulated in a way that fins are not. It extended slowly, the way a man extends a hand in dim light when uncertain of what he will find. It did not reach me. It retracted before contact. But it had been extended in my direction, toward the only warm thing in that column of cold water, toward the only thing in the dark that was still breathing. Then the creature moved on. One lateral pulse. I felt it as a pressure change, not a wave, and the silhouette shrank as the body climbed back toward the surface. I heard the shouts from the cordon vessels, the second volley of Pila. Then the liburna's hull spinning slowly above me, a broken disc against the grey morning light, and beside it, a piece of the mast, still tangled in cordage. I got my hands around the mast. I was in full armour. The mechanics do not favour survival, but the mast was floating, and my head was above the waterline, and I was breathing the salt air and the smell of the estuary. The water around the wreck was dark. Not all of it was from the creature. 17 of us were recovered, not 18, not 20. 17 out of 50 who had boarded the Liburna that morning. The Praetorian record states 22 survivors. I was there. I counted the men on the dock that afternoon, sitting in the sun with their wounds and their silence. We were 17. The 5 men between 17 and 22 did not exist in the casualty record, because acknowledging their loss would have required acknowledging that the operation had produced more dead than the Emperor's office was prepared to account for. The creature was killed that afternoon. The cordon drove it back into the canal mouth with repeated volley fire and sealed the passage with a weighted net of iron-reinforced rope. The creature, unable to retreat, died in the shallow canal over approximately 2 hours. The Praetorian record describes this as a decisive and controlled military operation. The harbour master told me, in private, that the creature did not die from the Pila. It died because the canal was too shallow for it to breathe. It suffocated in water. I found this detail more troubling than anything I had witnessed from below the surface. The carcass was disposed of before dawn the following morning. I was not told where. No natural philosopher was summoned to examine it. No record of its dimensions was entered into any archive I have been able to locate. What Pliny the Elder wrote in the 9th book of his great work was this: that during the reign of Claudius, a creature of extraordinary size appeared in the harbour of Ostia, was engaged by the Praetorian Guard, and was killed with spears after becoming trapped in the shallows. Pliny calls it an orca. He gives no measurement. He notes that the creature had been attracted by the smell of hides from a wrecked cargo vessel. The hides detail is a fabrication. There was no wrecked cargo vessel. The harbour master confirmed this. The canal dredging is not mentioned. The casualties are not mentioned. My account exists in the archive under my name with the dimensions reduced, the extended limb absent, and the survivor count adjusted upward by 5 men who were not on the dock when I counted. I know which one I am. The archive knows which one it preferred. There are 3 things I have spent the remainder of my life trying to verify. They are not separate questions. They are the same question asked from 3 different directions. The first concerns the men who went into the water. Of the 33 dead from the liburna that morning, 9 were confirmed drowned on the basis of water in the lungs. 24 were listed as lost. No body recovered, taken by the Tiber current before the rescue boats arrived. The current at Ostia runs south and west, and bodies lost in the shallows frequently do not wash ashore for days. I do not dispute the mechanics. I dispute the composition of the lost. Of the 20 men from the guard who had stood on the upper deck, 6 were recovered. 14 were listed as lost. Of the 30 oarsmen below deck, 11 were recovered. 19 were listed as lost. The proportions are what concern me. The men above deck, in full armor, in the open, with access to floating wreckage, were lost at a higher rate than the men below deck, who had been enclosed in a lower space with less access to the surface. I raised this with the harbour master 6 months later. He looked at the figures on my wax tablet for a long time. He said that currents are unpredictable. He did not look at me while he said it. The second thing concerns what happened in the canal in the 2 hours between the creature entering the net and its death. I was not present. I was on the dock, having my wounds dressed. 3 men from the cordon vessels told me different things, independently, over the following year. The first said the creature had made sounds, low, felt in the chest, rather than heard with the ears, the way a nearby millstone produces sensation before sound. The second said the creature had not moved at all, that the stillness had been worse than any thrashing. The third said only that he had not slept well since, and that I should stop asking questions of men who had reason to want to forget. None of these accounts appear in the Praetorian record. The record states that the creature expired without incident after sustaining wounds from volley fire. Their accounts exist only in my memory and on this tablet, which I have kept under the floorboards of my quarters in the Calian district for 11 years. The third thing concerns the harbour pilots. There were 7 pilots working the Ostian harbour at the time of the incident. Within 18 months, 4 had relocated, 2 to Puteoli, 1 to Brundisium, 1 to Massilia, all ports far enough from Ostia that a man does not drift there by chance. The 5th died of a fever. The 6th retired from piloting and became a fuller's apprentice in the Trastevere district. Not a career a man chooses unless he is fleeing something worse. The 7th I could not locate. His name does not appear in the harbour records after the spring of the following year. His name was Gnaeus Marcius Sura. I knew him slightly, by sight, by the sound of his footsteps on the planking. He had refused to return to the water when the harbour master offered silver. On the morning of the operation, he had been standing at the end of the eastern dock, watching us push off. I remembered his face because it was the face of a man watching something he believed he would not see again. Not the creature, but us. He was not watching with fear. He was watching with the expression of a man who has done the arithmetic and cannot share the number. I did not understand that expression on the morning of the operation. I understood it afterward. What Gnaeus Marcius Sura had seen from the water, what all 7 pilots had seen, in whatever encounters had produced their collective refusal, was not included in any briefing given to the Third Cohort. Petronius Rufus told us the creature surfaced to breathe. He gave us its approximate length, estimated from above, from safety. He did not tell us what the pilots knew from proximity. He did not tell us what a man learns when he is in the water at eye level, close enough to see not the back, but the eye. I have since spoken with one pilot who remained in Ostia long enough to be found, the man who became the fuller's apprentice. He told me 2 things before asking me to leave. The first, the creature had an eye the colour of pale amber, and that eye had tracked him individually during his last transit past the canal mouth. The tracking was, he used the word deliberate, not the reflex of a large animal registering movement. Deliberate. The second, the creature, on the morning of the operation, had not been surprised by the cordon. He believed it had known the vessels were coming, had surfaced into the cordon rather than away from it, and had struck the liburna, not because it was nearest, but because it was the hull blocking the canal mouth. the only vessel whose destruction would open an exit to open water. It failed because the net was already in place further down the canal, which the creature could not have known, but that it may have chosen a target by strategic function. This is what the former pilot believed, and what does not appear in any document I have found in 11 years of looking. I am writing this in the 8th year of Nero's reign. I am 53 years old, and I have been careful since the morning at Ostia about what I say aloud and to whom. I have one hand on a stylus and one eye on the door of my room in the Calian district. That habit I developed 11 years ago and have not been able to set down since. Let me state plainly what I believe happened. Not what I saw, but what 11 years of careful inquiry suggests. The creature that entered the Ostian harbour was not a whale. The harbour master's estimate of 15 paces was conservative, taken from above, from the breakwater. My estimate from below, which the Praetorian scribe omitted, was closer to 35 paces, perhaps 40. The shallows were the worst possible environment for something of that size. Every movement risked grounding, and yet it struck the liburna with precision, in the correct location to destroy the oars, on the side that faced open water. The most consistent explanation accounts for the choice of target, the extended limb, the amber eye that tracked a man individually, and the sounds felt in the chest during those 2 hours in the canal. The creature was not operating on instinct. It assessed the cordon. It identified the hull blocking its exit. It struck that hull. It paused above the only living man in the water beneath it, extended something toward him, retracted it, and moved on. It did not attack the other survivors in the water. It did not attack the cordon vessels during its retreat. It went into the net and was still for 2 hours while it suffocated, and the men who witnessed that stillness could not sleep afterward, and none of them have said why. I'm not claiming the creature possessed reason in the way a man possesses reason. I am claiming that the behavior recorded by 17 survivors, 7 pilots, and at least 3 cordon soldiers does not fit the category of animal panic or territorial aggression. It fits the category of a large ancient thing that understood its situation, attempted to resolve it by the most efficient means available, failed because of information it could not have had, and died in a shallow canal while Rome stood on the banks and did not understand what it was watching go out of the world. The consequences were managed with efficiency. 24 bodies were never recovered, their proportions weighted toward the men who had been in open water, closest to the creature in those final minutes. The Praetorian casualty record was adjusted by 5, a number small enough to pass as administrative error, large enough to matter to 5 families who would never be counted. The harbour pilots were dispersed, partly through relocation payments I was able to partially confirm, and in at least one case, Gnaeus Marcius Sura, through means I cannot document but cannot dismiss. Pliny the Elder recorded what he was given. He was a careful writer who worked within the limits of available information. The information available to him had been selected. He could not have known this. He called the creature an orca, credited it to the smell of hides from a vessel that did not exist, and moved on. His account is the account that survives. Mine exists in the archive with the dimensions reduced, the extended limb absent, and the survivor count adjusted upward by 5 men who were not on the dock when I counted. The creature is dead. The canal has been filled. The harbour operates as it did before the dredging, and the grain fleets arrive on schedule. The Tiber mouth looks on a grey morning, exactly as it looked when we pushed off. Flat water, low mist, the breakwater arms, the silence of a harbour, before the day's work begins. I think about the stillness in the canal sometimes. 2 hours, a creature of 40 paces, net-bound, peeler in its back, going quiet while the Empire watched from the banks and called it dying. Whether the stillness was surrender. Whether something that could read a military cordon and select a target by function was also capable of understanding, in those 2 hours, exactly what kind of thing had caught it. The question is not what the creature was. I watched it move. I saw its silhouette and I felt, suspended in cold water in full armor. Not the terror of a soldier facing death, but the specific sensation of being observed by something that understood what it was observing. The question is this: who decided what Pliny would receive, and who gave that order?